Well, beat that. A great argument for the Socratic method of teaching. And I just wish I'd been taught maths like that years ago. Instead of being a rather bad historian, I might have been a professor at Oxford. I don't want to say very much because I know you've got to have the time to go and put your gowns on before ball. But I'd just like to say one or two things. I mentioned yesterday that I first came to one of these alumni Missing Minds gatherings in New York and was amazed that they were taking place in North America. These reunions with our local alumni and scholars from Oxford, but they weren't taking place anywhere else. So we started by holding them in Oxford. We now hold them every September, as some of you will know. And the next one this September is going to be held, I think, in the Maths Institute, isn't it? So you'll all be able to see where Professor De Soto reads last weekend's football results and works out the meaning of 3-2 and all the other results that he's been reading. But it's a terrific building, and the whole of that development, as the Vice Chancellor said earlier, is extremely exciting. We then held Alumni Weekends in Berlin, Paris, Madrid, and they were all a great success. And I hope you felt that this has justified, more than justified, the decision to start holding these weekends in Asia. And if you do think it's been worthwhile, there's no question at all that we'll be back again for very long. Because as I think we've made clear over the weekend, Oxford really is a world university, and that means that we're a university to serve and work with the rest of the world. And that, of course, means, as you discovered in our debate, Asia as well. How could it not be? I'd like to thank everybody who's made today possible. And in particular, I'd like to thank those who've demonstrated why it's important to recognize how good we are in Oxford, in the medical sciences and in mathematics. Sometimes people think that Oxford is preeminent in the humanities. That's true. But they forget how good we are in other areas as well. I'd like to thank those who took part in the panel with the Pro-Vice Chancellor earlier, demonstrating some of the extraordinary things we're doing in the sciences. And of course, I'm delighted that Marcus was here to demonstrate how wonderfully well we're doing in mathematics as well. I think I'm right in saying that if you put together graduates and undergraduates, there are 1,200 or 1,300 people at Oxford in either studying or researching or teaching mathematics, and a very high proportion of them are from Asia. High proportion from China and India, and that is hugely to the benefit of the university. It's one of the reasons why today we're so good. So I'm pleased we were able to demonstrate that. I'm also delighted that in the panel debate, which finished, as you know, with a score draw, ish. And we were able to hear the heads of two of our schools which are making such waves, the Blavatnik School and the Business School, that you were able to hear from Rana Mitter, who is running the China Centre, which if you come to Oxford in September, you'll be able to see, I think, physically in the grounds of St Hugh's. And I'm also delighted that one of the stars of the BBC, and formerly a star economist at Oxford, was able to show what she knows about business and the world economy. So I think we've had a really good and exciting day's discussions. It'd be nice if after this you were to let us know how you think we might have handled things differently, whether you think we should have organised some breakout sessions. I always used to think that breakout sessions were the things that the British Home Office did after people had escaped over the wall at Dartmoor. But some people think that we should do one or two sessions with smaller groups of people with greater exchanges. So if you've got any ideas about that or about anything else, please let us know, because these are your occasions and we want to work with you to make sure that they're as successful as possible. I want, above all, to thank all of you for being here, for being terrific ambassadors of a university of which you will always be a part, and to hope that with your help and support we can ensure that Oxford remains a world-class institution. As you know, there are league tables produced by magazines and by newspapers about the rating of universities. There are a lot of quibbles about the methodologies which produce those listings. I've noticed that universities which are going up the tables think that the methodologies are pretty good. Universities that are going down think that they're rubbish until they start going up again. I think whatever, they tell us something, and what they tell us is how well Oxford is regarded. But that's, in my view, sometimes overlooks the most important part of what happens at Oxford, which is the way people are taught and shaped for life. There's a story about the British Surgeon General during the Crimea War. I say very quickly, the first and I hope only Crimea War. He was being assaulted by Florence Nightingale and newspapers for the appalling level of medical services, and he said that the medical services would have been perfectly all right had it not been for the number of casualties. And I think there is always a danger when people are talking in a rather abstract way about universities to forget that what's most important is what happens to the people who are at them, how they're taught, how they're shaped, not just for an exam, but how they're shaped for their lives beyond. And I was really pleased that Marcus finished up with that admirable statement about the liberal values of an education, which Cardinal Newman would have enjoyed. He used to talk, as my predecessor would have put it, about what should happen in the umbrageous groves of a university. And Marcus, I think, got it absolutely spot on. Of course we have to, we want to be useful, but we want blue skies rather than governments telling us what useful means. It's not very long ago that no politician would have described a climate scientist as being useful. There was a commission that reported for President Roosevelt in 1937 on what was going to be useful and what was going to be important in breakthroughs in the next few years, and they produced a very long report which didn't mention jets, and didn't mention most of the medical breakthroughs that were made, and didn't mention lasers, didn't mention most of the things that we nowadays take for granted. So don't ever forget that a great university is part of the pluralistic value system in any society, and that its greatest purpose of all, not back just to push back the frontiers of knowledge, but to ensure that the people who enjoy the benefit of a university education are shaped for life and are able to live to the full and develop their potential as far as possible. So, I think we've now got an hour and a half before. Is this the room that's going to be transformed into the dining hall? No, it's a different hotel. Four Seasons. So I'm dining here on my own. Just as well you told me, Vice Chancellor. Otherwise you'd have been speaking at the end of dinner. So I'll see you in the Four Seasons later on. And don't forget to come well wrapped up. Because in my experience, and I've been to most hotel ballrooms in Oxford, ballrooms in Oxford, ballrooms in Hong Kong, the air conditioning is normally turned up to the point at which you need to wear underwear, 3 levels of it. So see you later on at the Four Seasons, certainly not at the Marriott.